going to last as long as it has. What, a pandemic? Nah, we get one of those every other Tuesday. We'll be fine. It'll last a few days, a week at the most. We'll get through it. Man, were we idiots? I mean, I still wake up in the morning some days and ask myself, is this really the state that the world is in? Is this really life from now on? Is this the real life? Or is it just fantasy? That is the question. Okay, don't get me wrong. I struggled with the pandemic when it first started. I was nearing the end of my senior year of high school, and all of a sudden, the universe decided it wanted to make life exponentially more difficult for everyone. All of a sudden, I'm getting emails from the school saying, we're getting quarantined, batten down the hatches, we don't want to see your faces, and we don't want you here. Go home, high schoolers, you're drunk. Yeah, I'll be honest, I struggled to cope with that. I really did. It wasn't because of the quarantine, it was because I still had to finish my senior year online. We even had to have a socially distanced graduation at the high school. Yeah, the class of 2020 didn't graduate in some super long ceremony. Oh no, not us. And I'm telling you, it was the best thing that had ever happened to me. I was not looking forward to that super long ceremony. And I had just gotten my diploma without having to go through it. That's when I started to realize, this pandemic doesn't have to be a problem. I was standing right in the middle of a golden opportunity. You're telling me that I don't have to leave my house? I am required by law to stay right where I am and not interact with any other human beings? Oh, thank you, Lord, my introverted dream has come true. I mean, if I weren't such an antisocial recluse, these last few months probably would have been really hard to get through. I had a pretty good summer. Of course, it is over now since I'm going to college, but hey, any way the wind blows, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm just glad I'm no longer the only person who has to say that they need to update their social life.
Becoming an expectant mother affect your relationship with the father?
He was around for the first 8 weeks of the pregnancy, and then I never heard from him again. So there really isn't a relationship there. He's never come back around. She'll be 4 next month, and he's never come back around.
I do not feel that I deserve any bit of forgiveness for this, but I wish I would forgive myself for self-hatred. I bring myself down harder than anyone could ever bring me down. Yes, it's okay to be honest with yourself, but not to the point you beat yourself up over it. I am my own worst enemy, and I still to this day struggle with self-forgiveness.
Look, I know my family's not perfect. Like, one time my mom left me at Walmart. That was an accident. And then another time when she backed into me with her car. That was another accident. I hope. Those are terrible points to bring up, but my family may not be perfect, but they've always been there. Like, my mom. She has been there for every show that I've ever been in, even in Wizard of Oz when I was tree number 3, where I was on stage for a total of 4 minutes. And my dad, despite being disabled, he's always there to take care of me when I'm sick. And my brother may be a jerk, but I know that he loves me. You wanna know why? Because he's been there. My family has never turned their back on me. When I need them most, they have always been there for me, right by my side. So what if they've all nearly accidentally killed me on several occasions? I would choose them over the perfect family any day.
Everyone has that one song that they feel describes them extremely well. The song that describes me is I Can Go the Distance from Disney's Hercules. I've been through a lot in my life. I was bullied constantly because of my autism. And because of that bullying, I never felt like I belonged anywhere. I was literally in a shell and refused to come out. That was at least until I joined Wings at Lynn Meadows Discovery Center. There I met Joey, who was my mentor. He helped me realize that I did belong. I belonged in the theater, whether it be on stage performing or backstage doing technical work. There were people who said I would never graduate high school because of my disabilities. Well, guess what? I did graduate, And here I am on my second year of college, performing on stage where I belong, like on the distance.
So when she was about 6 or 7 weeks old, we noticed that she was not eating, she was lethargic, but she was just not sleeping, she was screaming. It went on the entire night. The next morning we called her doctor. We realized, something was obviously wrong, and we noticed that her soft spot was swollen. So we called her doctor. Her doctor had us come up, and as soon as we got in, they looked over for about 30 seconds and sent us straight to Memorial. Got to Memorial, and they ran a bunch of tests, including a spinal tap, and they found out she had group B strep meningitis, which is, I think, bacterial meningitis. And she was admitted into the hospital. They told me right then and there that most babies who get GBS do not survive. If she did survive, she would be a vegetable, or she would just not do very well. About a week into our hospital stay, she had a stroke. Stroke caused us to be life-flighted over to New Orleans at Ochsner's, and we stayed there for about a month. She was born perfect, perfect health, perfect hearing, everything, and the stroke is what may have caused her deafness. They don't know if it was the GBS or the stroke or just a combination, but it was at the end of the month stay they did a hearing test, because they always do hearing tests on babies before they discharge them. And she failed the hearing test, so they had us come back up there about a month later. She failed that hearing test, so they did something called a sedated ABR, where I don't know what it is they use, but they go in and they test from the inside, and it showed she was completely deaf in one ear and had about 20 to 25% hearing in the other ear. I fully expected that she was not going to survive with how bad she looked.
John, art. I believe art is something more than for the elite or for someone who's trying to create a zombie apocalypse, Now, I do believe that art exists in all people, regardless of race, gender, or occupation. Art is actually a communication system. It allows us to express emotions and perceptions of the truth in a way that, words just don't convey. Art allows us to maintain and create culture. It allows us to connect to something greater than ourselves. In fact, John, I can't even imagine a world without art. Each day would be like the other. It'd be non-changing. Our lives would be even more so. It would be a terrible world, John. We have to have art. And I mean more than just a painting or a sculpture, the written word on a page. I mean, art is who we are. It's what we are. It's our past and our present. It's intertwined into what will be our future. So art, it's what we are. Art, it's who we are. And more importantly, art is what we will become.
Although the world is filled with tragedy and despair, I am rejoicing for all the wonderful things in my life. My father, after 29 years of law enforcement, is finally retiring. Tomorrow, a party will be held with close friends and family to celebrate all of his achievements. Yes, he will miss this job dearly, but now he begins a new chapter.
I don't get embarrassed. I don't feel embarrassed, I should say. It becomes a mixed emotion. Like, one time I was riding my bike and the chain broke and I went face first into my mailbox. My friends were with me and they were all laughing, I was laughing. It was like, it hurt, but it was an enjoyable event. It was funny. So I didn't get embarrassed too much because everyone else was laughing with me. And then there was another time. It was more serious because I got hurt even worse, but I still didn't get embarrassed and everyone laughed still. We were doing stuff for senior night in band, and we were bringing our podiums to the field. A kid offered us a ride back in his truck. So, on the way back, I was climbing into his truck, and he started to drive. He started to speed up. He didn't slow down, and he hit a corner. And I flew off. Everyone said I looked like a rag doll flying through the air. They were worried at first because I got hurt, but in the end, it was still hilarious. So it didn't really feel embarrassing.
Do you have any idea what hour of night it is? You've had this entire household worried sick. Your mother's in the back, full of stress and anguish. What are you trying to do here? Take a look at yourself and ask yourself, what are you doing here? And give yourself a fighting chance.
Well, Jesse was one of my best friends. I was in a very bad relationship, a very unhealthy situation, but I had nowhere to go to get out of that. You know, it was either keep a roof over my child's head and stay in this unhealthy situation for me, or, you know, not have a roof over her head. But Jesse kind of helped me work through it and realize that, you know, there were things I could do to push myself out of that situation. He helped me, like, work harder, make more money, as in, like, you know, giving me advice, telling me it was worth it, even though I was scared because I didn't want to spend that much time away from Micaiah at the time. But I decided I was going to work more hours. I was going to push myself harder. I got myself an apartment. He has helped so much. I mean, in ways that I never would have expected. He's helped her speech because he has a brother who's also special needs. He's not deaf, but he does have a lot of disabilities, and him knowing how to handle a child with disabilities has helped so much. I mean, ways that I would have never thought of on how to handle different things that she goes through. And her having a steady and stable second parent has helped her behavior issues. It has helped just, you can tell that she's a happier kid and that she's so much more secure feeling.
What is your most embarrassing moment? I hate it when people ask me that question. There are plenty of times in my life when I felt embarrassed. The problem is, there are way too many to count, and they're all too embarrassing for me to want to talk about. I know that's probably how a lot of people feel, but I don't think you understand. Anytime anyone asks me to talk about my thoughts or feelings, it always somehow leads to me talking about my anxiety. Anxiety can be a common thing in people these days, but that doesn't make it any easier to deal with. So many things in our world today are disregarded because they become mainstream. I don't think people really realize how having mental disabilities can hurt. Do you have any idea what it's like to get nervous anytime you walk into a room with other people? I'm self-conscious of everything I say to others. Every word that comes out of my mouth makes me think that people will dislike me. Before I know it, my mind starts to spiral out of control. It almost makes me wish I had something normal to talk about for once. So why don't you tell me? What do you think I'm supposed to say in that situation?
My mother's the most important woman in the world. She is my pillar, and without her, I wouldn't become the person I am today. She is my hero, and I admire her hard work in taking care of me, her little brat. She works hard in and out of the house to ensure that we have a roof over our head. She's always supported my decisions and helped guide me if I stray too far from the path. Generally, being the only child, I was really spoiled, so she bought me everything I ever wanted. When I got older, I made a promise to myself that I would take care of her when the time comes. I would do anything for my mother, especially for taking that bright, beautiful smile of her. That smile is really contagious, and as her son, it's my job to protect that smile, along with sharing it with everyone else around me. She is my world, and I love her.
Joyce. Well, that's a word I rarely use, for fear of misuse, abuse, and or letting loose the blues. Blue isn't blue, and if one were to, things might be different between you and I. We do fit together like a glove on hand. And when Rick James used to sing that on the radio, they played it for a decade. Then they played something else. Songs written, rewritten, recorded and awarded. That's all I gotta say about that.
What do I fear? I can't just list a bunch of fears off the top of my head. I'm afraid to ride on elevators. I will climb 11 flights of stairs before I ever get into one of those death chambers. Or spiders. Yeah, spiders are freaking creepy, but, well, anything with more than 8 legs is creepy in my book. But I guess if I had to choose just one fear that sort of stood out to me, I guess. Well, it's just something that's been on my mind recently. But all my life, I have never been completely alone. Like, even when I felt like I was, I can look back at that moment and see that I really wasn't. Someone has always been there for me, which is really nice and all, don't get me wrong, but now I have this terrible anxiety about what's going to happen when I lose someone that I'm extremely dependent on. I appreciate these people in my life, I do, but sometimes I just wonder what's going to happen when I lose them. My world would crash. So, I guess you could say that that's what I fear.
Well, financially, thankfully, we have Medicaid. Since she, is disabled, they fully cover everything. Her hearing aid, her cochlear surgery, her cochlear implant. Financially, it has not been a burden at all. We've gotten free speech therapy from USM. And, but emotionally, it was really hard. I mean, there was a really hard grieving period whenever we first found out. It still makes me emotional. My family didn't really believe it at first. They were in denial. So, I mean, any talk about a hearing aid or a cochlear implant, it was turned down by everybody around me except for my best friend who supported every step. But I had to push through and, kind of talk to them about, I know it's hard. It's hard on all of us, but we can't let her suffer because we can't accept it. And they've accepted it now, but they're still constantly making comments about, oh, she just talks so well. You can't tell me that girl can't hear me. Because she's adapted. I mean, she's been deaf since she was, 8 weeks old at the least. So they don't really want to accept it still, but they don't really judge how I handle it. But it definitely has been huge emotional journey for me. Honestly, I continued to sing to her every night, even though I know she couldn't really hear me for a hearing aid. I joined some groups on Facebook for parents of hearing impaired children. I even made friends with a girl on Facebook who had cochlear implants and was completely deaf, and she helped so much with the decisions, because I wasn't sure if she would hate me in the future if I went through with the surgery, or how she would handle it, what was the best option. So it helped a lot to have other people to talk to. Before the implant, her speech was, of course she was a baby, but her speech was noticeably not up to par. Mm-hmm. She was trying, but she couldn't pronounce things, because in her other ear, like I said, she did only have the 20 to 25% hearing. Over time that has gradually declined, but she does wear a hearing aid. She just, whenever the implant happened, the first day after the surgery, she obviously was a little out of it. It took about a month between the surgery and the device being put on. But as soon as we put the device on, you could just tell it was a difference. And through using the cochlear and the speech therapy that we've gone through, she has caught up with other kids her age. She speaks in full sentences. I mean, she can tell you a story for 20 minutes straight. And kids her age with that level of loss, usually they don't speak as well as she does. You can just hear in her voice like how different it is. I mean, even when she takes the implant off now, there's a difference between when she's wearing it and when she isn't wearing it in her speech. So it's definitely helped to where she will most likely be in mainstream classes when she starts kindergarten next year.
3 years ago, I lost my father due to cancer. I felt like I was a disappointment to him. I was always lazy when he was at home. I thought to myself that I could just do nothing. The only time I ever told him I loved him was on his deathbed. He couldn't hear a thing. I was such a fool. I ignored all of his gestures to me. And all the times he wanted to show me love, but I pushed him away because I cared about my mother at the time. When he died, all my emotions just came and hit me. I wish he could have. I wish he could have seen me graduate high school and college. I wish he could have been there for my wedding. I wish he could have seen his future grandkids and told them stories about his time in Vietnam. I wish I could go back in time and tell him how much he means to me. Tell him how much I love him.
Don't get me started on heights. Fears are not fun. I hate heights. Ladders are too tall. I can't go anything but the third step without feeling nervous. People say don't look down when you're really high up. Well, that just makes you want to look down even more because you don't know how far you're actually up. And then when you peek over, you're done for. You're too nervous to keep moving, so you just stand still. It's like you're paralyzed until you have that person walk with you to get you through the rest. But yes, I will not do heights. It's too high.
Last night I dreamed that I was walking on the edge of creation. I was walking along a river of flowing water, living water, flowing from unknown fountains to a destination unknown. I saw stones flowing through the water like dancing diamonds to a point in the distance where a man stood by himself, knee deep in the water. There he was picking up stones one by one and putting them into a bag or throwing them back in the water. Finally, this man, after what seemed an eternity, looked up and looked at me. And he said, "All stones are not ready. Some will be thrown back. But in the end, all will be made perfect in time." And with that, he disappeared, leaving nothing but the sound of the water and the dancing stones disappearing into eternity. Suddenly, a rumble of thunder, and the river too disappeared. I was once again in my bed, watching lightning create illusions upon the wall and thunder in the distance. I began to think about my dream about creation, and if I might be one of those stones.
It definitely taught me a lot about myself and a lot about motherhood. As far as, the unconditional love, the way you would give your life for somebody else. I didn't expect it to be as strong of a love as it was. I didn't expect it to change every aspect about me. I mean, I'm nowhere near the person I was when I was 18. It showed me that I was worth more than I ever thought I was. It's taught me a lot of self-love. It's taught me a lot just about everything in life. It's nothing I ever would have expected, but at the same time, it's better than I ever expected.
The pandemic hasn't affected me that much. I've always been an outcast. I was the weird kid nobody liked. It wasn't until I was 11 that I found out why I was so different from everyone else. I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, which is a form of autism on the higher end of the spectrum, which means I was smart but I lacked social skills. It wasn't until I met Joey, who was my mentor, that I really became out of my shell and was able to communicate with people properly. He would listen to me when no one else would, and Joey was one person I really looked up to. Unfortunately, he passed away on June 21st, 2017 due to cancer. I was devastated. Before he passed, he requested that we had a party in his honor. It wasn't to be a sad party, but a happy one. And at this party, I talked to his mother. And she told me that out of all the kids in the Wings program, and there were a lot of us, out of all the kids, I was his favorite. That broke me. I ran to the bathroom and cried after I locked the door. Ever since Joey passed, I haven't been that close to anyone. Even when I'm in a crowd, I feel alone. There is one person who I feel close to. He kind of reminds me of Joey in a way. I feel the same warmth and safety with him as I did with Joey. And I've really been enjoying this work study I've been doing with him. It's like a hole has been filled in my heart. This person I'm talking about is Mr. Ryan Perini.